Tash, Zack, and their Uncle Hoole want to make sure that Borborgimus Gog's Project Starscream has been destroyed. So they journey to Kiva, a galaxy's outer rim. Kiva is dark, rocky, and barren. Except for some strange shadows, the planet is completely lifeless. And when they find Gog's laboratory, it's empty. Or so they think.
Greetings, younglings, and welcome to the Nepsis 8 Jedi Library. I am your junior Jedi ghost librarian, Levi Paratic, and with me, junior Jedi ghost librarian, Timothy May.
Hello, everybody. This is, of course, Padawan Library, the world's only Star Wars junior novel podcast. And
And Galaxy of Fear!
Yeah, Galaxy
Spooky.
of Fear. We're back again with Galaxy of Fear. Our book review this week is on Army of Terror.
Book 6.
Book 6 of Galaxy of Fear by John Whitman. And we'll get to that in a little bit. But this week, I have to say, my Star Trek obsession is overtaking me.
Again with the Star Trek.
It's gotta be like just casually a part of the show at this point. Like I am obsessed right now. Listen, so I'm fully caught up on Discovery and short treks and Picard. So I've watched all the CBS All Access stuff. I'm generally mixed on it, on the current state of the franchise, but it is what it is. Next week there will be this new animated series. I'm mixed on my anticipation on that. I'm a little nervous about that.
Is that the Lower Decks animated series?
I don't know. We'll see. I don't really love that it's a comedy. I would be totally down for like a straightforward, adventure animated series. Like I think it would be a great move for Star Trek to do, but like a kind of like an adult comedy, like I don't know. Anyway, but
it sounds very Seth MacFarlane. So
don't put that in my like. Oh my god. Now I'm so desperate for content featuring characters I actually care about, meaning the original series cast and to a lesser degree the Next Generation cast, that I am now turning to books and comics in Star Trek. I am becoming a Star Trek book freak. I got this oversized graphic novel from 1992 that's written by the great Chris Claremont, one of the great comic book writers of all time. Of course, mostly responsible for anything you like about X-Men, this guy. And a true genius. Also watched a documentary about him that was basically film school level production, but had lots of good interviews. I'm all over the place. He wrote this graphic novel called Dead of Honor for Star Trek in 1992, and pretty good. Takes place over Kirk's whole life. And then I'm reading a book called Star Trek Federation that's like a kind of century-spanning adventure featuring both the original series and Next Generation crew. So nice. I'm having a great time with Star Trek. I'm kind of like that's kind of where my head's at lately. I've been watching like Superstore, that show. I just watched literally a whole season yesterday. Like that's where I'm at right now. At this point in the during the virus time, and the show's good, by the way, very good. Good. I'm curious actually how they might handle like episodes about this, since they work in a store that would have been open through the whole thing. So
right, they would have been all essential workers.
That would
so.
be, yeah, quote unquote. Because Walmart had to be open. There's no such thing as other grocery stores. The electronics department in Walmart had to stay open. Like, it had
of course,
to stay open.
people needed it.
They needed it.
Well, they needed it. But
anyway, I'm joking. But anyway,
I've been dedicating my time to, because I've been doing nothing. My final package arrived today, so I got the PlayStation.
So you guys will be out of here soon enough.
Yeah, two more days and we're out of here. But I've read, including this book, 3 books in 6 days. I'm on fire. So I've read I Know What You Did Last Summer with the Lois Duncan.
Not the. It's not a novelization of the movie.
No, it's the book that the movie is not really based on, but based on. So, like, it's been a long time since I've seen the movie. So now, if I remember in the movie, they run a dude over, and then they throw him in the trunk of the car, and then they throw him off a pier, right?
Something like that.
Assume he's dead. All right. Well, in the book, it's 4 teenagers. They run over a kid on a bike, and they keep going. And they make a pact not to. They call an ambulance and say somebody's been hit, but they make a pact to like not tell anybody about it. And so and then if they get a note, I know what you did last summer. But then it's like, but it's not a slasher. It's more of like a mystery. Like, okay, who is it, and how do they know that we did it, kind of thing.
Fair enough.
But it's pretty good. Pretty good, I would say. I think good. I gave it a midichlorian scale on Instagram anyway. I think I gave it like 9 midichlorians.
Oh,
so,
that's pretty high.
It's pretty high.
Yeah.
Well, it's also like the way it's structured is really kind of cool. Each chapter deals with each of like the teens, and like they also have very complicated relationships with their parents, and they like delve real deep into those relationships. So that's
cool. That sounds like straight up my ass. So
yeah, it's only
everybody knows I love like teen dramas.
Yeah, it's under 200 pages.
Maybe
it's
I'll
a super easy read.
What's the other book you read?
The other book was Carrie Fisher's Wishful Drinking, so her first memoir.
Oh yeah.
It has a lot of great little tidbits in it, but I found like the way it's written is not like, it's kind of wandering, and then like she'll make jokes about what she's talking about, and then she'll make a joke about the joke, and then a joke about that joke, and then by the time she's done, she's like on a completely different subject.
It's like kind of like a Nora Ephron type style, like essay style. Yeah.
But do you know that she had 3 phone calls with Cary Grant about drugs?
Well, I know Cary Grant was like a big LSD guy, right?
Well, Cary Grant famously apparently took LSD under a doctor's observation, so that was like, so whenever Debbie Reynolds thought Cary was having an issue, she like called Cary Grant and asked Cary Grant if he would call her. So he did, and like so this happened 3 times, and each time it happened, like she claims that she was able to convince them, like him, that like she didn't have a drug problem, she had it all under control, her parents are just overreacting, but they would just like end up talking about stuff. And at one point she was making a movie with Chevy Chase. And Chevy Chase apparently had said some things about Cary Grant being bisexual, and Cary was not a fan of Chevy either, so they both bonded over their dislike of Chevy Chase. So.
Well, a lot of people can bond over that. The other thing that I did recently is I bought a smartphone. There's nothing to talk about with this. But this is big news for people in my life.
For you.
In my life, it's big news.
You've made 2 gigantic life leaps in 2020. Like you have like.
Well, I have my driver's license. I got my driver's license.
Right, that's the first one.
And this I would not consider gigantic, to be honest with you. It has not changed my life at all, really.
Because you have an iPad, so like it's
I still basically only use my iPad for like anything. And the only thing I use my phone for is work and like texting and calling, basic phone stuff. Mm-hmm. So, but it's it's fine.
But you did have a flip phone up until this point.
Yes, up until about a week ago.
Yes.
So yeah, and I was the last one of all of our friends. We had another friend, Zach, who was holding out for a long time and just got one a few months ago, and I felt good that I beat him. So I was like, you know what, I held out long enough.
You've won the race. So.
Yeah, so it was good news. The other thing, one last thing, and then we can move into the book. You know, we don't need to ramble for 35 minutes this week.
Right.
You sent me a message on Facebook a couple days ago where you said, let me just get all this out, and then we can talk. Yeah. You said, quote, if the first Matrix is A New Hope, then Reloaded is Attack of the Clones. Now, wait on this. I read this, and I was like, okay, I figured you had just watched Reloaded. All right. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, you know, listen, as a fan of the Matrix sequels, I'm used to this kind of slander being slung in the way of these movies. I've lived with them for almost 20 years. You know, I've gone through my own ups and downs with them, which we don't need to get into. But I'm a huge Matrix fan. I'm upset. I love. The first movie is one of my 10 favorite movies of all time.
That's a masterpiece.
Now,
the first movie,
one of the greatest movies ever made. The sequels, I feel like, are the most fascinating giant budget movies that Hollywood... This is not even an indicator of how good or bad they are, but it is crazy that these are $150 million Warner Brothers movies. Because they are...
I can agree with that.
Absolutely... There is a scene in The Matrix Reloaded in which the character of the Merovingian... You know the Merovingian, of course. He's the Frenchman.
Okay, all right, yeah.
The French program, who, by the way, if you know the deep lore, he is, he's, from a previous version of The Matrix, in which it's, themed with, gothic horror, werewolves and vampires and shit. So that explains him a little more, maybe, if you were confused by him. But there's a scene in which, he serves a cake that causes a woman to orgasm, and the camera goes in X-ray vision to show her orgasm. This is in a $150 million big tentpole action movie. Just wild. It is one of the... Yeah, it's just a crazy movie.
It's a crazy time. Now, granted, when I texted you that message, I had not gotten to the rave/sex scene, which is when the movie picks up a little bit, because the first bit of that movie is getting deep into world building. Is the first part.
I agree.
We go to
Zion.
Is it Zion? I was about to call it Solace. Wrong franchise. Flash to the Jedi. We go to Zion, so there's some deep world building there. A lot of political,
Cornel West playing one of the elders as, I believe, Dr. West.
And of course, Michael from Lost is there. He's the new engineer.
Harold Perrineau,
yeah. Yep. So, but that's when I sent you the message. The movie, I feel like, if I were to compare it to anything, is a little bit more like Sith than anything. Big action scenes, that kind of thing. But I don't think the movie lives up to The Matrix, the first one, though.
Nobody's saying that. Listen.
Okay.
It's a fascinating object. That's all I like. And have you watched Revolutions yet?
No, I'm going to save Revolutions for a little bit.
I'm curious what you'll think of that, because that movie is much more complicated.
And I don't think you could get more complicated than Reloaded.
My feelings about it are more complicated.
Okay.
Because I think Reloaded is has incredible set pieces, the freeway chase is incredible.
Yeah,
I think.
I agree.
And there's and I love the ending. I love the architect scene. I'm all in on the architect. One of the great inventions. I just think the Wachowskis are geniuses, and I like basically every movie they've ever made. So it is what it is.
Wachowski fan.
I
did want to share this, because this is not the first time I've technically seen the movie. I've seen the movie once before when it came out. and I recall none of the movie other than the sex scene. And the reason I recall the sex scene is because I saw it at the drive-in. It was a double feature of The Matrix Reloaded and Malibu's Most Wanted. The Jamie Kennedy vehicle.
Yes,
we were there. We were there for Malibu's Most Wanted.
Oh my God.
But my mother went with us, and my mother never saw The Matrix 1, and she was just utterly confused the entire movie.
Oh, it would be the most confusing movie ever made. It has to be.
Exactly.
It's already kind of confusing because there's all this extra material that's honestly basically essential to understanding the movie. I was a huge fan at the time. I was in on everything. I read all the comics, which were all supervised by the Wachowskis. The comics, the Animatrix, Enter the Matrix, the video game, all of this stuff is honestly basically essential material to understanding the sequels. It is a fascinating thing. It's so ambitious. I love a lot about it. I love what the sequels ultimately are about. But yeah, they're a complete mess. I wish they were a little cleaner. But but I've also lived with them for so long that whenever I watch them, I'm just like, it's fire. It's like the prequels, honestly. It's a similar arc for me.
Well, it kind of, the jump in quality, I feel like...
A lot of the crew is the same, by the way.
Yeah, I believe that. I believe that. But there's definitely a feeling of more money being tossed around,
It is... first of all, it's crazy. If you think about the run the Wachowskis go on after The Matrix, they got... obviously that's one of the most culturally significant, huge movies of our lifetime.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
And so I get why they got this many chances, but they got so many chances at huge movies. We're talking massive movies. And they made the Matrix sequels, which did obviously were the first Reloaded especially was a huge hit, but they both made money. And then they didn't direct V for Vendetta, but by most accounts they were very much in charge of that movie.
Huge success, that movie. So
huge success. That one did well. And then they do Speed Racer, which is one of the greatest movies ever made, but huge bomb, massive bomb. But it rewrote, how action cinema is done. Again, they did it a second time after The Matrix. There are things like Scott Pilgrim versus the World doesn't exist without Speed Racer. I think. Unfortunately, action movies have gotten so staid because of Marvel since then. But there was an edge. It was like Speed Racer came out, and then a couple years later there was Scott Pilgrim. And these are big, these were big. I feel like in the filmmaking community and the people that care about action movies, these were huge deals. It was look at these, they're so inventive, and then Marvel just took over the culture and kind of ruined everything. But regardless, and then even after that, they get to make Cloud Atlas, which is $150 million movie and huge bomb. I think a very good movie, but that is crazy. And then they get to make Jupiter Ascending, which is also a $150 million movie, and I think it's their worst
also
movie.
Huge bomb,
worst movie, and that seemed to finally end it. Because then they did the TV show, and now they've broken up, and now one of them's doing a Matrix 4. So it's very sad to me. All of it's very sad. Easily my favorite blockbuster directors of the last 20 years of my life, frankly. So I look forward to Matrix 4 if they get to actually finish it.
Right. Well, that's the whole reason I started watching the sequels. So I rewatched the first one.
That is one of the greatest movies ever. That's a perfect movie.
So good. That is incredible. Yeah, just incredible.
I saw that movie when they re-released it for the 20th anniversary last year in the theater, and I hadn't watched it probably in 5 or 6 years. But that is a movie, frankly, besides Star Wars, I don't think I've seen a movie as many times. And it was so weird being in a theater and just I'm ahead of the movie by a half second the entire time. It's just completely it's incredible. It's one of those things where every moment is iconic. It's like what I said in the first The Oracle, nice. It's what I said in the first episode of this show about the original Star Wars, is that it feels primordial. It just feels like it's always been a part of me, even though I clearly remember the first time I saw it. Like, in a way that actually I don't clearly remember the first time I saw Star Wars. Like, because I was older when The Matrix came out, obviously, but, like, it changed everything for me. I would not care about movies the way I do if The Matrix didn't exist. I just wouldn't. I would care about Star Wars, maybe, but would I care about movies broadly? Maybe not as much.
Maybe not. Speaking of another movie you like, a movie we've talked about on this show, but I finally sat down and watched Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
Oh my god!
Which your comparison of Qui-Gon and Tall in the main characters is so spot on. Like, watching that, I was like, Jude Watson had to have watched this movie.
Oh, I mean, she definitely
yeah, she definitely watched this movie and was just like, this is the basis for Qui-Gon and Tall. Like, because it is so perfect. That is the most perfect comparison for those characters.
Did you go back and look at my Instagram posts? It's like perfect. It's like back and forth. Listen, if you guys haven't seen, I mean, Crouching Tiger, I think Ang Lee, he's another person I just love. I adore Ang Lee. Like, and you know.
And he's another one of those directors that, like the Wachowskis, like, had this huge hit and then just got blank check after blank check written for him. I mean, and he's had some hit and misses.
Yeah, but he's been a little more up and down. They've had a set. They did. I get why they. It's frankly, I think, because the Matrix sequels, and V for Vendetta all hits. So, I think that's why they were able to get essentially 3 movies off of that did nothing. That tanked. But still, regardless, with Ang, though, I mean, like, it's crazy. I love Ang Lee. Like, his movies, I watched all of them last year. Like, I watched through his entire filmography, and frankly, like, I don't know. Like, Crouching Tiger might not even be my favorite, and that's crazy, because I think Crouching Tiger is straight up one of the best adventure movies ever made. I know that movie's kind of like I think amongst the, like, kind of wuxia community, the super hardcore fans, it's a pretty controversial movie because it's more mainstream or whatever. And probably, and I know, like, and he's made by a Taiwanese director, who, you know, of course, Taiwan, you know, they have to share a lot of the same roots, obviously, and then, you know, China doesn't acknowledge them as or whatever, because China's fucked up. Whatever. Why am I? I'm all over the place. But that movie, though, and his movies in general, like, if you look through his filmography, I think, yeah, you should check out Eat, Drink, Man, Woman. That's probably my favorite. Okay. That is a perfect movie. And then, of course, The Ice Storm is a classic. And I love Ride with the Devil is super underrated. That's, like, the most underrated movie I can think of by a major director. Like, nobody talks about it. Almost no one's heard of it. Somehow it's on Criterion. Yeah.
I haven't heard of those 3 movies. I haven't heard of any of them.
You haven't heard of The Ice Storm?
No, I haven't.
Okay, yeah, so, these are all pre-Crouching Tiger.
I'm not super well versed on Ang, so, like, I know of Ang. I've seen Crouching Tiger. I've seen Hulk, of course. Saw that when it came out.
Hulk is also, like, you need to have, you know, that's an interesting movie to have discussions about.
And then I've seen Gemini Man, of course.
Have you seen Brokeback Mountain?
Oh, and I've seen Brokeback Mountain,
which is also a masterpiece.
A
perfect movie. So,
Life of Pi, I know if people consider a masterpiece. So, like, he's had his ups and downs, unlike the Wachowskis that have had their downs. But
I like all those movies.
They're comparable.
It's just commercially with the Wachowskis. I feel like Speed Racer is now widely regarded as the masterpiece that it is. So I don't think it's.
One thing that Mel said when we were done, as soon as the movie was over, she goes, "I think I can say that's one of the best movies I've ever seen."
Crouching Tiger?
Crouching Tiger, yeah.
Yeah, it's just incredible. The entire flashback sequence in the desert is, like, just one of the most romantic things I've ever seen in my life.
And not only that, but, like, for the fact that, like, the way it's structured to have this, like, you get through the first act, and all of a sudden there's this new character that enters, and
so
like
exciting.
There's this whole history, and they take the time to, like, walk away from the story to tell this whole other story. And the fact that the movie cost $15 million and was filmed over 5 months is insane to me.
Well, different kind of economic situation in terms of movie financing in China. So, but still.
But that seems like
crazy.
Such a small amount of money and such a short amount of time to make a movie of that scale.
I mean, 5 months is a pretty long schedule.
It is a lot. I mean, it's half a year.
For almost. A full time. Like, you're thinking of, in the context of our movie-making exploits, which are, like, all done,
5
like...
to 6 years long.
Yeah, so... But, yeah, no, Crouching Tiger is, I mean, Michelle Yeoh... Good lord.
Oh,
she's my favorite actress, probably. I love Michelle Yeoh. Like, it's too bad they're wasting her in the new Star Trek stuff. But anyway, I won't get into that. Yeah, so... But yeah, and Chow Yun-fat, that's kind of his last, like... I mean, not that he's never been in movies since then, but it's kind of his last, like, iconic performance, I feel like.
Mm-hmm.
So...
Well, yeah, because Mel goes... Was he in Pirates of the Caribbean? I go, oh, he sure was in Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, I love him in all those John Woo movies, of course, but the early
which
ones.
is something else. Like, to bring it back to the Matrix, was like Mel and I both agreed that like the Matrix Reloaded has very much like that Pirates of the Caribbean sequel vibe. Like,
well, it's the same. Both the sequels for both of those were the film back to back, the Back to the Future
back to
model.
back. Yeah, film back to back, way more money. I think that's like a mistake to film sequels back to back, because if the first movie doesn't do well, then you're screwed for the second one. So,
or it's like usually it's something that's guaranteed to do well, at least financially. But if like fans are kind of like, oh, this is a kind of a disappointment, then you have time when you're making the third one to rework and figure it out.
Right. Like, it works with The Matrix and Pirates of the Caribbean because you know that second movie is going to be a huge hit, and if you end it on a cliffhanger, you're for sure going to get people in for the third one. Even if it doesn't make as much money, you're still going to make money off of it. Yeah.
The only time that's really worked for me is Back to the Future, because they actually still made those two distinct movies, really. Like, it's crazy they shot those back to back, honestly, because Back to the Future 2 and 3 are very different. So it's like, that works because of that. But if like it were like, because to me a lot of this stuff is like if Back to the Future 2 were stretched to 2 movies, because it's like both the Pirates situation and the Matrix situation are like these super complex, like super like just like world building like. Yeah,
because Matrix Reloaded or Pirates of the Caribbean 2 don't have definite endings, whereas like Back to the Future 2, like it has a contained arc, it ends, and then we're left with this cliffhanger that takes us to a whole different movie.
Right.
So.
Yeah. So like that works better, and I think what happened there is that people saw that Lord of the Rings worked so well because they shot all 3 of those back to back, but they had source material there. They knew, like, you know what I mean? Like that works because of that, but. I think generally shooting 2 movies back... That really hasn't been done,
no,
really,
they've stopped doing that.
Like, in a long time. I guess, technically, like, Infinity War and Endgame maybe were shot back-to-back, but like... But those then one of those really... One of those also just doesn't work, by the way, as a movie. You know?
Yeah,
so,
the one's a mess, and then the other one, like, scales it back so far that it works, surprisingly.
Yeah, I like that movie. Endgame is the one we like, by the way, not these freaks like Infinity War more, by the way, are like... You just like world building bullshit. Like that's what you like. You don't actually care about characters or anything.
You don't care about storytelling or anything. You're just fine with watching scenes that just like build to this one big thing that's not really a story, but okay.
All right. Well, speaking of spooky storytelling, that's not what we were talking about. But speaking of it, when we come back, we will talk about. We'll return to the Galaxy of Fear and talk about. The Army of Terror! Welcome back to Padawan Library. I'm Tim May, here as always, with the one and only Levi Peretic.
That's right, I'm one of a kind, baby.
You're actually not. This is. Do you remember this? Why am I bringing this up? There's some like independent. Probably nobody's seen it. Body swap comedy that was made in Tennessee. That there's an actor in it named Levi Peretic, and I remember.
What?
Yeah, we talked about this. This was a couple years ago. It's on Letterboxd. and I made a list called "Movies Starring Levi Peretic," and it's just that movie.
That one movie. I do remember this.
I don't remember the title of it. You know what? I will go back and look, and we'll talk about this at length next week. I don't feel like wasting time.
Well, speaking of this, I've heard about the recent discovery that you are not the only Tim May in Erie, Pennsylvania,
God.
And this other Tim May is also a Star Wars fan.
Okay, well, listen, for our fans who might look for us on social media or anything, I am very inactive on social media. I am on Facebook, but I do not post. If you find a Tim May from Erie, Pennsylvania that is posting frequently, it is not me. Let me make that clear. It is not me. So do not like, this guy is the biggest dork in the world, and like he's like an anti-mask freak. Like, please do not, please
you
do not.
Like you're following this Tim May.
I'm not. My so-called friends are, and they're coming at me with it, always just telling me about all these like annoying things this guy posts about. No, so he's also not even from Erie. Like, whatever.
But you're not either, Tim.
Yeah, okay. I moved here when I was 10. I grew up in Erie, Pennsylvania. This guy moved here seemingly when he was an adult, apparently. Why are we talking about this? This is a bad move. All right, but...
Well, because you called me the one and only Levi Peretic. I'm not the... You know what? We should have gotten into this when we read Galaxy of Fear Clones, is one we should talk about this, but,
Yeah.
Moving on.
All right,
Galaxy of Fear. All right. Where we left Tash and Zach Aranda, however you want to say it, they were on Nepsis 8, where they were trying to escape the Empire. They were meeting up with Force Flow. Force Flow turned out to be a catfish, and he was none other than Borboigimus.
But I cannot pronounce his first name.
Borboigimus Gog. We'll just call him Gog. Because his name is impronounceable. Because I was reading the other day, and Mel was like, "How do you say that name?" And I was like, "I don't know. You try." And she couldn't do it either.
It's impossible.
It's impossible. But anyway, he was doing some forced harvesting stuff. It was Phase 5 of Project Starscream. But anyway, they defeated him. He fell down a pit, and they escaped. And that's where we lead to in this book here. So they go to... you take over, Tim.
All right, well, they... Hoole...
Do you know the name of the planet?
I don't know the name of the planet, but Hoole says...
Kiva.
Kiva, yes.
Kiva.
Hoole says that he knows where Gog's home base is, what planet it's on. He knows it's on Kiva, and so they just head there, straight there. And like Tash and Zach are thinking, that's weird that he knows so easily. I don't know where he got that information, but whatever. We'll head there now. And they get there, and they start walking around, and they start hearing voices saying, "Murderer."
And Mammon.
Murderer. Mammon murderer. Mammon. Mammon. Like Mammon from heaven, but with M's. Sorry. Anyway.
And they get attacked by shadow creatures. These creatures are shadows, and they're the ones screaming murderer
Wraiths.
and Mammon.
Wraiths. Like the Wraith with Charlie Sheen. A movie I've never seen, but I would see the box at video stores often. It's him in a big bike helmet, like a biker helmet, his face covered, and it would just say Charlie Sheen, the Wraith. And I always thought it was a sci-fi movie, but I don't know. Anyway, continue.
Who knows? Okay, so anyway, they find Gog's Borgimus's lair, and in it they think that all the files are gone. While they're there, they run into none other than Luke Skywalker, Princess Leia, Han Solo, Chewbacca, and a merry band of rebels.
And C-3PO and R2-D2. Don't forget them, like J.J. Abrams.
They're actually important to the story. They're vital to the story here, because R2 taps into the computers, pulls all the files. That comes important later. But they they said, oh, well, they're there for Project Starscream. They had also been piecing together Project Starscream. Tash and Zach, of course, are able to fill Leia in. Of course, they have that infinite connection to Leia because of the fact that they're all from Alderaan. And we all know Tash has a thing for Luke. But that's because he's a Jedi boy.
Yeah, and she's just, still young enough to have those sorts of crushes. It's fine.
Right, exactly. So, but while they're there, they find an egg-shaped thing, a birthing pod, and they open it, and inside is a human-looking baby. And the baby looks to be about 1 year old.
Continue.
The baby keeps saying, Eppin. So they think that's the baby's name.
Yeah, they think it's a Pokemon. Listen, we'll get to it, but I have a grand connection to make to Star Trek with this.
Okay, all right.
Continue. I don't want to...
Can't wait. All right. So they take the baby. The Empire shows up. Vader is there. He's trying to get Project Starscream under control. And so they're running from the Empire. They're trying to get back to the Millennium Falcon because the Arandas and Uncle Hoole crashed their ship on the way in. So they have this rebel guy by the name of Rax, Rebel Rax, and he's holding the baby, and they have to run through these narrow, jagged rocks. They all got to split up. Well, when they split up, they hear the Eppin crying. They run over, and Rax is gone. Only his clothes remain.
His name's Rax, remember? Rex would never have done that, the Clone Wars character.
Well, I found this funny, too, because Han said gruffly, Rax was a good man. Come on, let's get going. So, he takes one sentence to mourn the man, and then they keep moving. However, they get caught in the crosshairs of Darth Vader and stormtroopers, and they send Han, Luke, and Leia. They send Tash and Zach away because they said, "Oh, they're after us. We destroyed the Death Star. You guys go back to the Millennium Falcon. The rebels will take care of you there." So as they're on the way there, though, they get attacked by the shadow creatures again, and the shadow creatures corner Uncle Hoole, and they say Hoole is the murderer. Hoole is the scientist who killed all of us, who made us all shadow people, and we must execute him. So Tash and Zach, they have no choice. They go back to the ship.
Well, they're in disbelief, but Hoole is nah. They're right, basically, and just walks away.
Yeah, he's got guilt written all over his face. He's just like, well, I guess I'm dead. I deserve this. So they find out the truth from Uncle Hoole, and the truth is that Hoole is Mammon. And turns out back in the day, Mammon Hoole and Borgimus Gog were partners, and that they were scientists right at the start of the Empire, and they didn't know any better, and they took a 1 million credit deal with the Empire, and Hoole was obsessed with creating life beyond genetics, actually making a life, and so they ended up on Kiva there, where they were doing some experiments with I don't know some sort of laser or something.
Yeah, and then it was supposed to be essentially create some sort of being, perhaps this Eppin character, but they backfired and essentially it destroyed all life on the planet.
Yes, and it trapped all of the souls, I guess, and it destroyed their physical beings but left their shadows. Is how it's explained. It's a wild, basically. Yeah, it's a wild concept for Star Wars, but I like it. I liked it.
It's fine. Book. You got to stretch it out sometimes. It's fine.
Yes, exactly. So that's why Hoole feels guilty about this. So anyway, they go back to this rebel transport, and they meet DV and meet up with DV, and DV, he has the whole truth of the story. So the children don't want to believe this because this is their uncle. He takes care of them. Well, DV has the whole truth. He got the whole truth from R2-D2, who got it from the computer files. So, turns out, while Hoole is partially responsible for this, Gog knew that it was going to fail. Like, the project was going to fail, was going to explode, and it could have.
And he convinced Hoole that it was safe.
Right, he lied to Hoole, but he told the Emperor that it was going to backfire, but it could be a promising new weapon for Sheev. So, of course, that's why he went through with it, and of course, it was quite an effective weapon. And then afterwards, Hoole, of course, can't deal with himself. He feels so much guilt. This accounts for why in his personal file there's a 4-year gap where no one knows where Hoole went. But the Empire and Gog, of course, then take the events and they point all the blame on Hoole. So that's why these ghosts think Hoole is responsible, not Gog. And Gog has been seemingly using this planet still as his home base of operations this entire time and has not been touched by the Shadow People. So that's the explanation for that. And there's a great scene in the cockpit too where they get attacked by the Empire. Oh, okay. So anyway, they're in the cockpit. They're
trying. They're letting you go.
Yeah. They're in the cockpit of the Rebel transport. They're trying to escape when a blaster bolt comes by and blows up the cockpit, the controls. It's Gog. Turns out Gog survived. What? He's alive. They don't explain how he survived. Oh, Gog, no. But he survived.
Oh my Zod, no, Gog.
Oh my Gog. I'm writing that down. I'm going to use that in this description. But anyway, he's going to kill them. But then Vader shows up. Vader takes Gog away. And, another important thing, Eppin. We got to get back to Eppin. Eppin keeps growing.
Okay. He keeps growing rapidly. This, of course, reminded me, and my Star Trek fans in the audience know where I'm going with this, reminds me of the Search for Spock, when essentially Spock is reborn on the Genesis planet and is essentially growing back into his natural age as the planet is rapidly aging, and it's going from birth to death very quickly. That's the idea of the Genesis planet. So that's actually all I have to say. But he's essentially growing in this very rapid fashion, although it eventually becomes something else. Like, you think he's just getting older, and then eventually it just turns out he turns into a giant man monster.
Yes, that's what happens to Eppin, a man monster. So
what's the difference? Think about it.
So Vader takes Eppin and Gog away, and then he interrogates the children. And this is actually interesting because they start describing all the different phases of Project Starscream, and Vader apparently did not know many of these details. So Vader listens intently to these children.
I love this scene that Vader is just like, interesting.
Interesting. Just like him breathing.
This is what I wanted to talk about. Like, before we started recording, I was like, there was something I was trying to remember. I think it's Tash from her perspective. Obviously, it was third person limited in a lot of cases. But she is like, oh, well, of course, Darth Vader used to be a Jedi Knight before this. And I was just like, how does she know that? Because this is I would imagine that's not widespread information, and Luke doesn't even know that. Luke, I guess he does, yeah, because he thinks Darth Vader was. I guess, okay, never mind, forget it.
Yeah,
I'm thinking the prequels are tarnishing my thoughts on this.
But she also knows that the Emperor is a Sith Lord too. Like, it seems like the way the way it's brought up is that, like, it feels like it's just common knowledge that Vader and Sheev are Sith Lords. Even though, like, I feel like other pieces canon paint, Sheev is Sheev, who is attacked by the Jedi. He's just the Emperor, not a Sith Lord. That's not commonly known. Whereas, like, I feel like Vader is more of, like, a myth. Like, not, like, public knowledge
there are
on
people
Vader.
that don't even believe he exists in a lot of other stuff. Like, a lot of other books.
Right. Right,
comics.
he's more of just like he's just like a phantom, like is how I would that's how I would picture him in this time period. Is you just, I mean,
but of course this is also from the EU prior to the prequels, so like a lot of things were different in terms of how people thought about Vader and the Emperor and stuff, like in those stories. To be fair,
yes, I agree. So anyway, Vader listens to their story. Then Vader locks them in the cockpit. He goes on, does his thing. The children escape the cockpit, which, interesting enough, so Zach tells Tash to use Jedi mind tricks on the stormtroopers guarding the door. She instead, not quite telling them, like, oh, back away, she uses her thoughts to make the one stormtrooper believe that the other stormtrooper is insulting him to the point that they get in a physical fight. Comical,
pretty funny
so,
stuff.
Yeah.
And then Gog. This is when Gog shows back up and takes Eppen. He's taken Eppen, right? At this point,
yeah, he's taken Eppen,
and shows back up with Eppen, and Eppen's a huge monster man, as I said earlier.
Yes, because they find out that he like spits on people, they dissolve, and then he sucks them up.
He has acid
and
spit.
And then that's how he gets bigger, and he becomes the creature that we see on the cover of this book, a very non-looking human creature with blood-red eyes, they kept saying in the story. So Tash and Zach, they escape, they take the Millennium Falcon, they fly, because they have to rescue Uncle Hoole. So they rescue Uncle Hoole from the shadow creatures using ion weapons, because they don't like the light. They go back to Gog's lair, where they're confronted by Gog and the monster creature. Vader shows up, and he starts to battle the creature. The rebels show up, Han, Luke, Leia, Chewie, they all show up. They battle the creature. And what else happens? So Vader doesn't get very far. Vader cuts off the creature's arm. It grows back. Vader ends up getting trapped. And then Tash then, since Eppen...
Eppen, by the way, the name, to explain it, the only word he knows is weapon, and he just says it like a little baby boy. Like, Eppen. So,
Eppen,
and the reason he knows weapon is because Gog developed him as a super weapon, and apparently would just say weapon over and over again, and this is,
Right, and Eppen, weapon, is Project Starscream. He is the first soldier in the Army of Terror. And how he's Project Starscream is the fact that he has the ooze, like Planet Devourin.
Yeah, like Ivan Ooze himself.
Yeah, he has he survive death, like the zombies. He can ooze like the amoebas in the one planet. I can't remember what that one. The virus, Planet Plague.
Yeah,
I don't remember a lot of that book. And then
many years ago
from the Nightmare Machine, he can look at people and show them their greatest fear.
And so he incapacitates the heroes of Star Wars, Luke, Han, and Leia, no problem.
Yeah.
And so that way Tash and Zach have to save the day, basically.
Yes, I can't remember what they were like fearing, but I remember like Hans was like, "I'll pay you back, Jabba."
Yeah, that was very, because Luke was like Ben, like something, and then I can't remember Leia's. It was something about Alderaan, maybe, like something serious,
just making scared noises,
something serious. But then Hans just like, Jabba, I'll pay you back. I mean, that's scary.
Yeah. So Tash then decides to use her Jedi mind powers to focus on Eppen, look him in the eyes, and say, hey, remember when you were a baby, like an hour ago, and we had a good time together, and we took care of you? And about that time, Luke snaps out of his trance, and he joins her, and the two use the Force together to subdue the monster, and then use the monster to attack Gog, which, as Eppen is charging at Gog pulls out a remote, hits a button, and Eppen's head explodes. And he was just like, well, I had planned for this, so I planted a explosive in his brain in case this didn't happen. So that happens, and then DV the shadow monsters come back. They come into the building. They're after Hoole, and then DV goes over to her computer and plays a video message that Gog had made and sent to the Emperor, where he was admitting that he knew the weapon was going to backfire. That, of course, makes all the shadowy, the wraiths, change their mind and go after Gog. And then our heroes, they all escape in the Millennium Falcon. And that's where they end. And then Vader escapes from his little area.
But then Epin's arm also twitches.
Yes.
So you're like, oh,
yes.
Epin's still alive too. So
yes. But I feel like Gog has to be dead this time. There's no way Gog isn't dead.
I think Gog's probably dead. Like, because I think now it'll be more about Vader.
Yes,
forward.
It has to be. Because a lot of our major plots are tied up. We know what Project Starscream is. Project Starscream is Weapon. That's the only cliffhanger here in terms of Project Starscream. We've learned Hoole's past. We know Uncle Hoole's first name. So, like, really, it's just, Vader, Epin, and the children. So, and the next book is The Brain Spiders. I can't remember the actual title of that.
Isn't that what it's called?
Think it might just be The Brain Spiders. But I think that is Jabba calling in his favor from the last book. Remember, Hoole asked Jabba for the location of the rebels, and Jabba helps him out, but he owes Jabba a favor. I think Jabba calls in his favor in the next book, so that's where I think the next book is going. So
very exciting. So this series, I feel I'm enjoying it, but I don't feel like there's tons to talk about. You know what I mean? It just feels kind of like a plot machine in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
It's exploring interesting sides of the Empire that we don't get a lot, like at the Empire's height, like when they're kind of like I'm enjoying, and I think there's some cool Vader stuff in this book, like a lot of cool.
But this is also the second time, so the last book had the Ghost of the Jedi, which, for most of the book, you think the Ghost is bad and the Ghost is mean. And then in this book, you have the Shadows, which are essentially more Ghost. So, every book has to have some sort of beastly creature in it.
Yeah, because it's supposed to be horror, but really, the vast majority of these books aren't really horror. It's like there might be a monster, but it's not like...
And I also felt like this book, too, this book doesn't have, I don't know if this makes any sense, but this book doesn't have, a premise. I felt like in this book, the characters were always moving, and they never really stopped. They get to the planet, they go to the Gog's hideout, and then they meet the rebels, and then they're walking some more. I don't know.
Not... This book... Yeah, I agree. There's a lot... It feels... It's kind of obviously kind of a mid-series climax of some sort.
Mm-hmm.
It's not... It's wrapping up a lot of things we've been wondering about the whole time. And I liked it. This is how I feel about all these books. I think it's very entertaining, but they're not nearly... the Jude stuff has spoiled us in that there's so much to talk about usually with those books.
Mm-hmm.
And I just feel like these books are... They're not bad. It's not they're also not bad, and I don't even think it's not that they're mediocre. Really, I think they're pretty good, fun adventure stories usually, but they're pretty light on theme, and they're not. You know what I mean? So there's just not a lot going on.
Theme and moral, it doesn't have those.
Right.
We're so damn privileged to have Jude and just quality writing in this whole exploration of ours. But these books, I think these are, of the series we have read, Galaxy of Fear ranks up there with one of the better series. It might be number 2 in terms of Jude. Of course, we'll call the Judeverse the first series because it's all one series.
Yeah, basically.
And then, but this I might put as number 2. Because otherwise we have Jedi Prince and Rise of the Resistance. Fight for the Resistance.
Join the Resistance.
Join the Resistance.
Oof. Those have to be our most hateful episodes. We were very... I
agree.
Mean in those, I feel like.
I agree. That I feel like there can't be anything we hate more than that. So.
So that was a year ago we did those, I think. Anyway, this book specifically, I was pretty excited throughout. there was some interesting stuff going on. I think the Eppin thing, it reminded me, I joked about Spock, it did remind me a lot of that. If you ever watch Search for Spock, you will be, you'll be like, wow, this is very similar.
This is Eppin.
But, although he doesn't become a monster, man.
He becomes Spock.
He comes back, he's Spock. Yeah, I don't know. It's good. I'd give it like a 7.5 out of 10.
I was going to give it a 7, so yeah.
I always go up like a 0.5 higher than you. I feel like you're always like, wait for me, and you're like, I'm going to go 0.5 lower than Tim.
I'll make sure I go first next week. But you always love your points. You've been on a streak of points.
I know I have. That's true. But I just feel like it's not quite an 8, but the 7 feels a bit low. Like, I enjoyed it. And I like the backstory for Hoole. I'm curious to see how his character goes from here, you know.
Right. Yeah, now that they know.
Yeah.
So, but it also seems like Hoole, Hoole felt guilt, you know, about what happened. Hoole didn't expect that to happen, but Hoole learned his lesson too, not to toy with science, not to try to play God.
Right.
You know, unlike
Gog. Alright, so next time we come back to Galaxy of Fear, it'll be in a few weeks, and it'll be I believe it is the Brain Spiders is the name.
The Brain Spiders, yeah. I can't reach the book to tell you for sure, but yeah, it is the Brain Spiders. I'm pretty certain. So that'll be book 7. That'll
be in a couple weeks, but next week we're going to be doing Last of the Jedi, book 5. What's the name? What is the name of this one?
I actually couldn't tell you. I can't reach the book from where I'm at.
I don't have my books in front of me.
It's the Last of the Jedi book that's right on the end.
Yeah.
Mel's getting it for me. Other end. Yeah, that one. All right. It is A Tangled Web.
A Tangled Web, the one with Sheev on the cover.
Yes, the best cover of Cliff Van. Not Cliff Van.
John Van Fleet.
I always want to call. Yes, John Van Fleet. I always want to call him Cliff Van Lee, the actor.
Yeah. Lee Van Cleef, you mean?
Lee Van Cleef, that's it.
Yeah, from Good, Bad, and the Ugly.
Yes. Yeah. So, but yes, A Tangled Web next week.
All right,
and then another Last of the Jedi book after that, and then the Brain Spiders.
So yeah, this episode is going to be on time this week. So if you're listening to this at midnight Friday morning, then shouts. But yeah, maybe.
So yeah.
Have a good one. Next,
have a good one.
Yeah, check us out. We're all over the place.
We're a fucking mess right now.
Anyway, whatever. Check us out on social media at Padawan Library on everything. I forgot again to look up who did the fucking theme music for that I'm using for the Galaxy of Fear episodes. I promise to credit you next time.
This time? Well, I mean, I guess put it in the description at least.
I'll put it in the description, for sure. I apologize. And then it's a royalty free, so it's not like we're going to get fucked, but I feel bad about it.
Right.
And then our artwork is by Freddie Funbuns, right? And,
yes.
Is there anything else?
I'll give one... If we're talking about art, we'll give a shout out. Well, John Whitman. I don't know if we ever mentioned.
I mentioned him at the beginning of the episode.
Okay, good. And the artist is Steve Chorney, of course, who we've talked about before in detail. So, but shouts to him for. I really like his covers.
I do. They're a lot of fun. So yeah, but yeah. Anyway, so that's about it.
Until the books are due back.
The library is closed.
The Nepsis 8 Ghost Library is closed. Ooh.